I got married last month to my husband, and it was everything we could have hoped for. The ceremony was beautiful, with around 120 guests, mostly close family and friends. My husband's family is well off, not absurdly wealthy, but definitely comfortable, and they generously covered most of the wedding expenses. My husband and I were incredibly grateful for their support. As is common, we received monetary gifts from our guests, which added up to about $15,000. It wasn't something we had planned for, but it was a nice bonus. Something we figured we'd either save or put towards small home projects in the future. Now, to give some background on my family situation, I have an older sister, Melissa, who has always been the favorite. Growing up, it was obvious. She got more attention, better gifts, and more leniency whenever she made mistakes. If there was ever a difference in how we were treated, the reasoning was always that Melissa was more social or needed more support, while I was the independent, responsible one. Over time, I accepted it for what it was, but it didn't mean it didn't bother me. Melissa got married 6 years ago to her college boyfriend. From the outside, her life seemed perfect. They had a nice house, traveled often, and appeared to be happy together. But about a year ago, that illusion shattered when it came out that she had been having an affair with her boss for almost 2 years. Her husband was blindsided and the divorce was messy. After it was finalized, she moved back in with our parents. Since then, Melissa hasn't been doing well. She put on weight during the stress of the divorce, stopped going out as much, and generally seemed lost. I tried to be supportive despite our complicated relationship, inviting her out for coffee or walks, but she usually turned me down. Our parents, however, took the approach of coddling her, doing everything they could to make her feel better, just like they always had. 3 days after my wedding, my parents invited me over for dinner. I thought it would just be a casual catch up, maybe to talk about the wedding. I was wrong. After some small talk, they brought up how lucky I was to have married into money and how I didn't really need the wedding gifts we had received. Then they got to the real reason they had invited me over. They wanted me to give Melissa the $15,000 from our wedding gifts so she could have a post-divorce makeover. When I asked what exactly they meant, my mom casually explained that Melissa needed a fresh start and that the money would help her get back on her feet. They listed off things like plastic surgery, a new wardrobe, spa treatments, and even a personal trainer. Basically, an entire lifestyle reset so she could rebuild her confidence and eventually meet someone new. I was stunned. I thought they were joking at first, but they were completely serious. When I didn't respond right away, my mom continued, "You're going to be a stay-at-home wife anyway, so it's not like you need the money. Your sister needs to get back out there." For context, my husband and I had talked about the possibility of me stepping back from my teaching job for a while, maybe to start a family. But that was a private decision between us, not something that meant I didn't contribute financially or didn't need savings of my own. I told them I would need to talk to my husband about it, mostly as a way to get out of there without escalating the conversation. When I told him what they had asked, he was shocked. He made it clear that he supported whatever decision I made, but he also pointed out how ridiculous the request was. After thinking it over, I realized that beyond just saying no, I was tired of keeping these kinds of things quiet. The favoritism, the constant expectation that I should just accept being second best, it had been going on my whole life, and I was done pretending it was normal. At a family gathering a week later, one of our cousin's birthday parties, my parents brought it up again. They made a comment in front of some relatives about how I should be generous with my extra money, and that was the last straw. So, in front of everyone, I said, "Oh, you mean how you want me to give Melissa all of my wedding gifts so she can get plastic surgery and find a new husband? After she cheated on the last one? That generosity?" The room got quiet fast. My aunt asked if I was serious, and I confirmed that yes, our parents had asked me to hand over my wedding gifts so Melissa could get a makeover. People were clearly shocked. My parents turned bright red, and Melissa looked like she was about to cry. They left early, and later that night I started getting angry texts from both of them about how I had humiliated them. They accused me of airing family business in front of everyone and of embarrassing Melissa when she was already struggling. My mom kept insisting that I should have just handled it privately instead of turning it into a joke. Some family members think I went too far, especially by mentioning Melissa's affair. Others, though, think my parents were way out of line for even asking in the first place. At the end of the day, I don't regret saying no, and I don't regret making it clear that I wasn't going to be guilted into it. I spent my whole life watching my parents bend over backwards for my sister while expecting me to just deal with it. This time, I set a boundary and I'm sticking to it. Edit. Thank you all for the comments and support. To answer some common questions, yes, my husband and I had planned to use the money as a start for our emergency fund future home improvements. And no, my parents never asked Melissa to return any of the expensive gifts they've given her over the years to help me out. Update 1. It's been 3 days since my last post, and I wanted to check back in with an update on the fallout from all the family drama. First, I really appreciate everyone who took the time to comment. Reading through your perspectives helped me feel validated and gave me the confidence to stand firm. The day after the family gathering, where I called out my parents for their absurd request, my phone was flooded with messages. My parents sent a group text to me, my husband and Melissa, insisting we come over to their house to clear the air and make amends. My husband and I agreed to go, but we set some ground rules first. We weren't going to apologize unless we actually felt we had done something wrong, and we weren't going to be manipulated into anything. When we arrived, Melissa was already there, slumped on the couch, looking miserable. My mom had gone all out with dinner, making a spread of all our favorite foods, which I immediately recognized as her usual tactic. "See, I cooked for you, so now you have to forgive me." The moment we sat down, my dad jumped right in, saying how disappointed he was in my behavior, calling it immature and spiteful. My mom quickly followed up, claiming that I had always been jealous of Melissa, and this was just another example of me trying to hurt her. It was as if they were following the same toxic parenting script they'd been using my entire life. I took a deep breath and told them plainly that I wasn't going to sit there and be gaslit. I said everything out. First, wedding gifts are for the newlyweds to start their life together. Second, Melissa's post-divorce makeover is not my financial responsibility. Third, the assumption that I don't need money just because my husband comes from a well-off family is not only insulting but also completely dismisses my own financial independence. At this point, my husband, who had been sitting quietly, finally spoke up. What he said made me so proud. He told my parents that while he respects them as my family, he was appalled by how they treated me and wouldn't stand by while they placed more value on Melissa than on me. He pointed out that they were essentially rewarding Melissa's bad choices while punishing me for simply having a stable marriage. Then, to my surprise, Melissa finally spoke up. Through tears, she admitted that she had never actually asked them to demand money from me. She explained that she had mentioned feeling insecure about dating again and wishing she could afford some self-care treatments. But our parents had taken that and run with it, deciding on their own that my wedding gifts should fund her glow up. That admission cracked everything open. What followed was a 3-hour conversation that unearthed decades of family dysfunction. Melissa broke down, saying she always felt pressure to be perfect. The pretty one, the social one, the one with the dream marriage. She admitted that part of why she cheated was because she felt trapped in the image our parents had forced on her, even when her marriage was falling apart. Not that it excuses her choices, but it did give me some insight into why she did what she did. For the first time, I saw her not as the golden child who got everything handed to her, but as someone who had also been manipulated, just in a different way. While I had been ignored and undervalued, she had been put on a pedestal and expected to maintain a version of success that wasn't real. My mom at first got defensive, insisting they had always treated us according to our needs. But when both Melissa and I gave specific examples of their favoritism, she went quiet. Surprisingly, my dad was the first to admit they had been unfair. He said they always worried more about Melissa because they saw her as fragile, while they assumed I was strong and didn't need as much. By the time we left, there were no dramatic apologies, no big reconciliations, but there was an understanding. My parents didn't outright say they were sorry, but they acknowledged they may have been unfair at times. Melissa and I agreed to try to work on our relationship without our parents' interference. She assured me she never expected my wedding money and was embarrassed by how everything played out. As we were walking out, my mom pulled me aside and hesitantly asked if I was still planning to air family business to everyone. I told her I wasn't going to go out of my way to bring it up, but I also wasn't going to lie if asked, and I wouldn't tolerate any more over-the-top requests. The next day, I got a surprising text from my Aunt Clara, my mom's sister. She asked me to lunch, just the two of us, over sandwiches at her favorite cafe. She told me she had always noticed the way my parents treated Melissa and me differently, but never felt it was her place to interfere. She apologized for not being more supportive and said she was proud of me for standing up for myself. Then she told me something that floored me. Apparently, this wasn't the first time my parents had tried to redirect money towards Melissa. When our grandmother passed away 5 years ago, she left each grandchild a small inheritance, $5,000 each. Aunt Clara overheard my parents pressuring my cousin James to loan his share to Melissa so she could put a down payment on her house, the one she later shared with her ex-husband. Their reasoning? James didn't need it as much since he was still in college and living at home. James refused, which led to a temporary family rift that I had never even heard about. Aunt Clara told me to be prepared for my parents to try something similar in the future. She advised my husband and me to keep track of what we do with the wedding gift money, not because we owe anyone an explanation, but to shut down any future claims that we wasted money that could have helped Melissa. Taking her advice, my husband and I sat down and made a clear plan. Most of the wedding gift money, $10,000, is going into our house fund for future renovations or a down payment. Another $3,000 is going into our emergency fund, and the remaining $2,000 we're setting aside for a proper honeymoon next summer, since we only took a short weekend trip after the wedding because of my teaching schedule. Yesterday, Melissa texted me asking if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us, no parents involved. We're meeting this weekend, and I'm cautiously hopeful. I'm not expecting some big sisterly bond to form overnight, but maybe for the first time we can start untangling the mess our parents created between us. As for my parents, they've been surprisingly quiet. No guilt trips, no passive aggressive messages. I'm not naive enough to think that one conversation changed everything. But I do think that seeing both of their daughters push back at the same time might have given them something to think about. I'll update again after my coffee with Melissa and let you all know how it goes. Thanks again to everyone who gave advice and shared their own experiences. This whole situation has been exhausting, but in a strange way, it's also been freeing. Update 2. It's been almost a week since my last update, and so much has happened that I'm still processing it all. The coffee meeting with Melissa turned into a 5 hour heart to heart that completely changed our relationship. We met at a quiet cafe across town to ensure we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. When Melissa arrived, she looked nervous, but better than she had in months. She'd styled her hair, put on makeup, was wearing a cute outfit instead of the sweatpants I'd gotten used to seeing her in at our parents' house. After awkward small talk about the weather and coffee orders, Melissa surprised me by sliding an envelope across the table. Inside was a handwritten letter of apology, not just for the wedding gift situation, but for her role in the decades of sibling rivalry and unfairness. She explained that while she'd benefited from our parents' favoritism, it had also damaged her in ways she was only beginning to understand. The letter read, in part, I always knew Mom and Dad treated us differently, but I convinced myself it was because you were stronger than me, more independent. It was easier to accept their favoritism than to question it. I'm sorry I never stood up for you, and I'm sorry I let myself become so dependent on their validation that I lost sight of who I really am. I was floored. This level of self-awareness was not something I'd ever expected from my sister. As we talked more, Melissa revealed she started seeing a therapist immediately after the blow-up at our parents' house. The therapist had helped her see how our parents' differential treatment had affected both of us, making me feel undervalued and making her feel like her worth was tied exclusively to her appearance and social status. She confessed that her affair hadn't just been about physical attraction or marriage problems, it had been about validation. When her marriage hit rocky patches, which all marriages do, instead of working through them, she sought external validation from her boss, who was all too happy to tell her how amazing and beautiful she was. She acknowledged this wasn't an excuse for her behavior, just an explanation she'd come to understand through therapy. The most shocking part of our conversation came when Melissa admitted she spent years resenting me for having a more genuine relationship with my husband than she'd had with her ex. You two actually like each other, she said. You're friends. You laugh together. Keith and I looked good in photos, but we never had that foundation. As our conversation deepened, we ordered lunch, then dessert, then more coffee. We talked about childhood memories, some shared, others completely different based on our perspectives. We realized how our parents had subtly pitted us against each other from a young age, with comments like, why can't you be more outgoing like your sister to me? Or why can't you be more responsible like your sister to her? By the end of our marathon conversation, we were both emotionally exhausted but somehow lighter. We agreed to meet regularly, just the two of us, away from our parents' influence. We also made a pact to call each other directly if either of our parents tried to triangulate or create drama between us. The real test came 3 days later at Sunday dinner, a monthly tradition at my parents' house that I'd been dreading. My husband and I arrived to find Melissa already there. Helping in the kitchen, the atmosphere was tense, with my mother making overly cheerful small talk as if nothing had happened. Halfway through dinner, my father brought up Melissa's upcoming job interview, praising her for getting back out there. Then he looked at me and said, "You know, it would still mean a lot if you could help your sister with some new interview clothes. Nothing fancy, just a gesture of support." Before I could respond, Melissa spoke up. "Dad, stop. I don't need or want their money. I have my own savings and I've already bought an outfit for the interview." She turned to me and added, "Which Anna helped me pick out when we went shopping yesterday." The look on my parents' faces was priceless, a mixture of confusion and displeasure at seeing their divide and conquer tactics failing. My mother quickly tried to change the subject, but my father persisted. "Well, it's not just about clothes," he said. "Melissa's thinking about some enhancements that would help her confidence. Medical procedures aren't cheap and families should help family." That's when my husband, who rarely gets angry, put down his fork and said, "With all due respect, we've already discussed this as a family. Anna and I have allocated our wedding gifts for our future, and that decision is final. Continuing to bring it up is disrespectful to both of us and to Melissa, who has repeatedly said she never asked for this." My father started to argue, but remarkably, my mother placed her hand on his arm and said, "Richard, that's enough. The girls are adults. We need to respect their decisions." I nearly choked on my water. In 28 years, I had never heard my mother contradict my father, especially not in defense of me. The rest of dinner was strained but civil. As we were leaving, Melissa hugged me tightly and whispered, "Progress, right?" I couldn't help but smile. The next day, I received a surprising call from my mother asking if I'd meet her for lunch alone. Curious and cautious, I agreed. We met at a restaurant near her work, and after ordering, she did something I never expected. She apologized. Not a "I'm sorry if you felt hurt" non apology, but an actual acknowledgement of her behavior. She explained that seeing Melissa and me united against their manipulation had forced her to reflect on her parenting. She admitted that she had always favored Melissa because she saw herself in her, the pretty, social daughter whose value came from external validation. She confessed that my independence and self sufficiency had threatened her because she had never developed those qualities herself. "I was wrong to ask for your wedding money," she said, her voice wavering, "and I was wrong to treat you as less deserving than your sister all these years. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know I'm trying to understand what I did wrong." I was speechless. This vulnerability from my mother was unprecedented. I told her I appreciated her honesty and that while trust would take time to rebuild, her acknowledgement was an important step. Her acknowledgement was an important first step. My father, predictably, had been less receptive to change. He sent me a text saying he stands by his position that family should help family, but has agreed to drop the subject for now. It's not an apology, but at least it's a ceasefire. Melissa and I have continued to strengthen our relationship. We started a weekly sister night, sometimes just coffee, other times a movie or dinner. Last week, she helped me paint our guest bedroom, something we'd been putting off. It felt normal and natural in a way our interactions never had before. As for the wedding gifts, my husband and I have stayed firm in our plans for the money. We've already started getting estimates for some modest kitchen renovations, which has been exciting to plan together. This whole experience has been transformative. I've gone from feeling like the perpetual second best daughter to establishing boundaries and rebuilding relationships on healthier terms. It's still a work in progress, but for the first time, I feel like my family dynamic is evolving rather than staying stuck in toxic patterns. I'll update again if anything significant changes, but for now, I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of my family relationships. Update 3. It's been just over 2 weeks since my last update, and I wanted to share the final chapter of this family saga. So much has changed that sometimes I can hardly believe we're the same family from my original post. The most significant development has been with Melissa. Our weekly sister nights have become the highlight of my week, and last weekend she asked if she could stay with us for a few days. She explained that while our parents have been trying to be better, living with them was making it difficult for her to establish her independence and continue her personal growth. My husband and I readily agreed, and those few days turned into a week, which has now extended to a month-long stay while she apartment hunts. Having her in our home has been surprisingly wonderful. She's respectful of our space, contributes to household chores, and even cooks dinner a couple of times a week. The three of us have fallen into an easy rhythm that would have been unimaginable just a month ago. One evening, as we were sharing a bottle of wine after my husband had gone to bed, Melissa opened up about her therapy progress. She confessed that she'd been using our parents' money as a crutch for years, allowing them to bail her out of financial troubles in exchange for letting them control various aspects of her life. Her therapist had helped her see this as a form of emotional transaction that kept her dependent and stunted her growth. The biggest revelation came when she told me she'd cancel the consultations for the cosmetic procedures our parents had been so insistent about. I realized I was trying to fix my insides by changing my outside, she said. No amount of Botox or liposuction was going to heal the real issues. Instead, she's been focusing on rebuilding her career. The job interview she mentioned earlier was successful, and she's now working as an executive assistant at a marketing firm, a step down from her previous management position, but one she's taking with humility and determination. She's also enrolled in an evening course on financial management, determined to learn how to support herself completely. As for our parents, the situation is more complicated, but showing signs of improvement. My father, who initially refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing, had what my mother described as a wake-up call when Melissa moved out of their house and into ours. Seeing his daughters united and supporting each other without his control or input apparently triggered some serious self-reflection. Last Sunday, he called and asked if he could stop by. When he arrived, he awkwardly handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note that read, "This doesn't make up for years of unfairness, but it's a start. This should have been yours long ago." Confused, I asked what he meant. He explained that when I graduated college, my grandparents, his parents, had given him money specifically for me as a graduation gift, $5,000 to help me start my adult life. But instead of giving it to me, he had redirected it to help Melissa with the down payment on her house, reasoning that I was doing fine with my teaching job and first apartment with roommates, while Melissa needed it more for her married life. I was stunned by this revelation. The money itself wasn't even the issue anymore. It was the years of deception and clear pattern of diverting resources from me to my sister. When I pointed this out, my father didn't get defensive as he usually would. Instead, he nodded and said, "I know, I've been talking to your mother and, well, I've agreed to see someone, a counselor, to understand why I did these things." I'm still processing this confession and what it means for our relationship moving forward. I told him I appreciated his honesty and the restitution, but that rebuilding trust would take more than money. It would take consistent changes in behavior over time. He seemed to understand, saying he was willing to put in the work if I was willing to give him a chance. My mother has continued her own efforts at reconciliation. She invited Melissa and me to lunch last week and brought photo albums from our childhood. As we flipped through them, she pointed out moments she had missed or misinterpreted, times when she had praised Melissa for superficial achievements while overlooking my more substantial ones, instances where she had dismissed my feelings or needs in favor of Melissa's. It was difficult but healing to hear her acknowledge these patterns. As for the wedding gift money that started this whole drama, my husband and I have stuck to our plans. We've completed the first phase of our kitchen renovation, new countertops and backsplash. And the results are beautiful. We've invited my parents and Melissa over for dinner this weekend to see the improvements. First time we'll all be together in our home since this saga began. Melissa has been supportive of our renovation choices and even helped us pick out cabinet hardware. There's been no resentment or hints that she feels entitled to our resources. Instead, she's shown genuine happiness for our milestone and contributions to our home projects through her time and effort, which means far more than any financial contribution could. The most touching moment came yesterday when Melissa showed me what she'd been working on secretly, a detailed budget and savings plan to pay back our parents for all the financial support they've given her since her divorce. I want to stand on my own 2 feet, she explained, and I want them to see me as an adult, not as their perpetual project. I'm under no illusion that all our family issues are resolved. Decades of dysfunction don't disappear after a few heartfelt conversations and apologies. There will be setbacks and old patterns that resurface. But for the first time, I feel like we're all genuinely trying to create healthier relationships. My husband, who has watched this entire transformation with amazement, remarked last night that ironically my parents' outrageous request for my wedding money may have been the best thing that could have happened to our family. It brought long standing issues to the surface that might otherwise have festered indefinitely. As for me, I've learned that standing up for myself doesn't mean losing my family. In fact, it's given me a stronger, more authentic relationship with my sister and the potential for real change with my parents. I've also discovered a confidence in myself and my boundaries that I never knew I had. While this particular family drama seems to be reaching a resolution, the lessons I've learned will stay with me forever. That healthy relationships require honesty, boundaries, and mutual respect, that enabling bad behavior never leads to growth, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to say no. Thank you to everyone who has followed my story and offered support and advice along the way. Your validation helped me find the courage to stand firm when it would have been easier to give in to keep the peace, as I'd done so many times before. I'm grateful for this community and the role it played in this unexpected journey of family healing. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.